Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We did a little bit of a week one whip around, officially finished all of the games that I want to touch on from this past weekend because there were a ton that I wanted to get to, but let's get into my top 12 teams. We are through week one, everything is set after week one, and we're heading into a big time week two. Obviously, we have Texas, Michigan, we have Tennessee, North Carolina State, we have a ton of big time games this upcoming weekend, so let's give you an idea of where I have everyone sitting as we head into it. And the first one we're going to start from the bottom, so the first one might come as a surprise to some people out there, but I was very close to putting them in the first time around, and what I saw this past weekend makes me feel very confident putting them in now. I have USC at 12. I do think the performance that they put up on Sunday was really impressive. This defense obviously still has big time holes. The back end is not quite where you want it to be by any means, but they don't have to be great. I talked about it all offseason. They just have to take a very small step forward, and then Miller Moss and this offense can do just incredible things. And we saw it on Sunday, and we'll probably see it a lot more throughout this season. So it really just comes down to that defense taking that little step forward and continuing to do it throughout the year. Getting a little bit better from last week to this upcoming week, and then continuing forward, and then just let your offense work. As long as your offense is on the field, you're having a very nice day as a USC fan. So I was really impressed. I think they're a very dangerous team in the Big Ten, and I slotted them in there at my number 12 spot. Tennessee, I have at number 11, and I understand some people think people are overreacting to that UT Chattanooga game, and I fully understand that. It was UT Chattanooga. I'm not arguing that, but I was very, very close to putting this team in already going into the season, and they really impressed me on Saturday. Obviously, Nico was the center of that, was just downright magical, did everything that you possibly wanted him to do, but that defense was super stifling, and it was one of those things that you saw exactly what everyone else saw throughout the offseason, and I think this is a team that can make some noise in the SEC. Obviously, so much ahead of them, including this upcoming week against NC State, but this is the hot team on the block, and they feel very, very confident as they head on throughout the rest of this schedule. Number 10, I do have Michigan. I still think they're a top 10 team. I did drop them a little bit, but didn't want them necessarily falling off a cliff because I know what this team is going to be. I know they're going to be a defensive-led team. I know they're going to be a run-led team. Now, the run game was not nearly as good as it should be on Saturday, but at the end of the day, I still think this is a very good team. I still think they're going to be able to gut out a lot of these games. They have a huge one this weekend, and we'll see what they can do against Texas. There are some people that are saying Texas is going to take them to the woodshed. I don't necessarily fall into that group, but we'll see what my pick is later on this week. But it is a lot going on around Michigan, and as of right now, it feels like this team is slipping just a little bit. I still have them as a top 10 team, still think they're very dangerous as we head throughout the season, but was not a good week one performance and not one that feels like you can fix it all that quickly. So definitely some worry out there, but moving on to number 9, it's Miami. I understand that this was a big-time jump for this team. They're a top 10 team. They played just absolutely incredible in Gainesville this past Saturday, and it was one of those things where it wasn't just, that they were bigger, faster, stronger, and tougher than Florida, which in a lot of cases they were, but they had way more poise. Cam Ward walked down to that field, and you would have thought his heart rate was just as comfortable as ever. He was incredible throughout that game and made throws that frankly, no one on earth should be able to make. So, really impressive performance, and as of right now, they look like the team that might just run away with the ACC and head on to the college football playoff. Obviously, Clemson still has plenty to say about that, but as of right now, Miami is the team in the ACC. Oregon, I'm dropping all the way down to 8, and that is a big-time drop. I understand that, but there are a couple of big-time things in that game that made me very, very worried. The O-line looked really worrisome, and if you get into a Michigan game or an Ohio State game with that level of O-line play, you're going to get eaten up. There's no two ways about it. And then having Dillon Gabriel pass the ball 49 times in this game, way too much. I understand the running game was not going well, and I understand that Dillon Gabriel had a little bit of an injury early on in this game that might have affected him going forward, but if you're not going to be able to stretch the field passing the ball, and if you're going to pass the ball that often, teams are going to have every ability to just sit behind everything, tackle, and then just end up at the end of the day being able to beat you because your offense does not have the explosivity that it had a year ago. So I still think Oregon's a great team. They could bounce right back up with a big-time win over Boise State this weekend, but as of right now, this does not look like the team that we talked about all offseason. Penn State, I have at number 7, one of the other remarkable performances from this past week. Penn State, everyone says, all they ever not, or the only thing that they're missing is what everyone says. The only thing that they're missing is beating Ohio State and Michigan. The only thing that they have to do is beat those two teams, and then they're over the hump. At the end of the day, these are the games that Penn State would struggle with. Even a year ago, that West Virginia game, although the scoreboard says that Penn State won by quite a bit, that was a close game deep into that one. Penn State has struggled with Illinois. They've struggled with Indiana. They've struggled with these teams that, frankly, they just shouldn't. And on Saturday, they showed that they're not going to struggle with a lot of these teams this year. So it was really impressive to me, and I think they're one of those teams that could continue up this board if they keep showing what they showed on Saturday. Notre Dame, I have at number 6. Hard to not reward what we saw in College Station this past weekend. Still have some worries about that offense, but I think Mike Denbrock will be able to get it going and get Riley Leonard in the positions that he's supposed to be in and get this really the running offense going a little bit more as that offensive line comes along. So was really impressed with what they were able to do. I think the offense still has a ways to go. That defense is just outright ridiculous, and I think from pretty much every single level is just about as good as you're going to find around the country. So really impressive performance this past weekend, and I think when you look at Notre Dame right now, they might just be in the playoff right now. Looking at the schedule they have ahead, you might just want to pen them into the playoff and see what happens after that. But a really impressive performance and did exactly what Marcus Freeman wanted to do to start this season. Ole Miss, I have at number 5. I think this is a really, really talented team. Obviously did what they needed to do against Furman this past weekend, and it was a layup of a game, no doubt about that, but they did look remarkably clean. It looked like everything was exactly the way that it should be, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which had me a little bit more worried than the offense, obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see this team develop over the next couple of weeks, but as of right now, they look like the team that came in with all of that hype. They look like the team that could possibly win a national title and be a danger in the SEC. So really, really impressive performance. And although it was Furman, a lot of things were in place for that Ole Miss team that you were a little bit worried about going into the season. So really impressive, and I have them slotted in at my number 5 position. Alabama at number 4. I do think what we saw from Alabama this past weekend was really awesome. I think when you're coming in with a new head coach, Nick Saban walking out the door, so many different players leaving, all of the different changes going on around there, it would have been pretty easy for this game to be close at halftime. It would have been pretty easy for this game to be a little bit more sketchy than people wanted it to be for Alabama, but that didn't happen. Even from the jump, Alabama was all over Western Kentucky and played all the football that you wanted to play. The defense was really remarkable. Honestly, that was probably the more impressive part of the ball, or side of the ball to me. Was just incredible what that pass rush was able to do against Western Kentucky. So they have a couple of big time games coming up. You have South Florida this weekend. They have Wisconsin, I believe weekend after that. Maybe there's a bye in between there, but then they have that Georgia game. If they can figure out a way to go into that Georgia game undefeated and feel really confident in themselves, then that one gets really interesting in Tuscaloosa, and I cannot wait for it. But as of right now, I have Alabama at my number 4 spot, and I think they might just be able to climb a little bit more, honestly. Texas, I do have at number 3. Was really, really impressive on Saturday. I think everyone that was watching that game, it just looked like this team was fully on time, fully in place, did exactly what they wanted to do pretty much every step of the way in this game. It felt like everything was exactly how they wanted it to go about, and a couple issues on the line of scrimmage, but other than that, it was downright perfect. Quinn Ewers was as confident as you could possibly be. Isaiah Bond made a couple of huge plays along with Matthew Golden, so those transfer receivers are all making big-time plays. In fact, all 3 of them got into the end zone on Saturday, and then the pass defense was just really remarkable. I know it is Colorado State, but they can toss the ball around, so being able to play really good pass defense, 2 picks, under 100 yards passing for Colorado State in this game. If you can do that against Colorado State, at the very least, you're going to be able to hang around with some of the big-time teams. And then you have Ohio State at number 2. I think this is one of the, didn't have necessarily the cleanest of performances, at least in the first half, but were able to turn it on, did exactly what they had to do, and got a big-time win. And then Will Howard looked very comfortable in this offense. There were a couple of missed spots, there were a couple of little ers and ahs that he's going to have to get a little bit better in, but overall, they feel really, really good. And it'll stay relatively vanilla on the offensive side of the ball until they get into Big Ten play, and it'll be fun to see what his progression is throughout these next couple of weeks. But the defense was as dominant as you could possibly imagine they would be, and I don't expect that to stop anytime soon, and they did exactly what they wanted to do. So I'm not moving Ohio State from that spot. And then This one was a layup. Georgia absolutely went to work on Clemson, and this is the best team in the country. They were incredible on Saturday, and it was one of those things that getting closer and closer to this game, you felt like Clemson might just have a shot to make some noise, might just have a shot to cause some problems for Georgia. It wasn't that. And obviously the first half was a little bit slow, 6-0 at halftime, but coming out of halftime, it was all Georgia. It was domination from start to finish, and Carson Beck leads this team with so much confidence. They have more weapons than they have had in the past couple of years, and the defense is playing a little bit closer to that 2021-22 type defense. I don't think they'll be that level, but I do think they'll be plenty good on that back end, especially with Malachi Starks back there. You're going to be able to make plays. I can promise you that. So really impressive. This is the best team in the country. The juice that they have, the confidence they have, and the amount of times they show up to a game where it looks like something really sketchy could happen and they just bury that team into the ground is just incredible. Whether it was Tennessee a couple of years ago or Kentucky last year or this game, this team is just outright ridiculous. And Kirby Smart has his guys ready to go every single Saturday, and I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. I'll be totally honest with you. So really impressive performances from a number of teams. I had Oregon and Michigan dropping just a little bit. Was a little bit worried about a number of the things I saw in those games. And then Alabama I thought was really impressive. Texas I thought was really impressive. Georgia out of these teams I think might have been the most impressive. Just taking Clemson to the woodshed, and we'll figure out how good Clemson is throughout this year, but I tend to believe they're going to be a pretty solid team, and that game is going to be really, really impressive towards the end of the year. But obviously, this season is going to get a lot crazier from here. We are through week one. We'll do a couple of questions about week one tomorrow, I believe. But overall, we are through week one. We are on to week two, and we're fully underway now. So strap in. Things are about to get really, really crazy and really weird, and I'll keep you updated as we go. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the content and updates you could possibly need. We have really incredible people doing awesome work across every single sport you could want. So if you're not just a college football person like myself, you can go over to GSMC and we have you totally covered around every single sport you could want. So definitely check that out. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow for some week two breakdowns.